Oops, we forgot your seat, my sister giggled. Brooke tapped her manicured nail against the gold-framed seating chart displayed at the ballroom entrance. The sickly, sweet perfume of thousands of white roses hung heavy in the warm hotel air. Through the open double doors, the clinking of heavy silver on fine china and the low hum of wealthy guests drifted few out. I stood there and let the humiliation wash over me. The thick, cold satin of the envelope in my right hand grounded me. I was 39 years old. I worked as a regional payroll compliance manager, auditing corporate ledgers and tracking missing millions for healthcare systems. I was not a confused child. Yet, I was standing in a hallway, looking at a board that had systematically erased my existence from the family. Mom stepped up beside Brooke. Her expensive silk dress rustled as she moved. She pointed a sharp finger toward the exit signs at the end of the corridor. "You should probably head home, Amanda," Mom said softly. Her tone held that practiced, reasonable edge she used when she wanted to sound like the victim. "We do not want to make Brooke's special day heavy with any of your unnecessary drama." I did not cry. I did not ask why I was being thrown out of the celebration I had spent the last year funding. Instead, I looked directly at the bride. I smiled. "Do not worry," I said. "Looks like we both forgot something." Brooke's smile faltered. Her eyes dropped to my hand. The gold foil on the envelope caught the light from the crystal chandelier, but it was the black ink stamp in the corner that held her attention. The thick circular seal of the Domestic Relations Court. "Where were you last week?" Brooke asked. Her voice lost its giggly, innocent register completely. "Somewhere you should have gone 16 months ago," I told her. Mom quickly stepped between us. She let out a loud, forced laugh for the benefit of two passing bridesmaids in matching blush gowns. "Oh, Amanda is just feeling a little left out," Mom announced to the empty space around us. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging painfully into my bare skin. "Leave. Right now." Over Mom's shoulder, I could see Daniel near an elaborate ice sculpture. The groom. He was laughing with his groomsmen, holding a tall glass of champagne, looking handsome and completely relaxed. He had no idea the woman he was about to marry was still legally tied to someone else. Claire, the hotel wedding planner, hurried over before Mom could push me toward the exit. Claire had a clipboard pressed tightly to her chest and a wireless headset hooked over one ear. "Brooke, I am so sorry to interrupt," Claire said, breathless. "I need the final authorization for the premium bar extension and the after-party transportation. The hotel requires the card on file to be swiped one more time before the reception officially begins." "Amanda is handling it," Brooke said smoothly. She did not even look at the planner. She kept her eyes locked on my envelope. Claire turned to me, offering a polite, strained smile. She extended a payment terminal. "I have not approved those charges," I said, my voice steady and loud enough for Mom to hear. "And I am not the primary signatory on the venue contract. You will need to collect the remaining $17,500 from the bride and groom." Brooke's head snapped toward me. The color drained from her cheeks. "You would not embarrass me over money in front of everyone. This stopped being about money months ago, Brooke." I turned my back on them and walked away from the ballroom doors. The heavy floral carpet muffled my footsteps as I headed toward the lobby elevators. Brooke did not stay to answer the wedding planner. She chased after me. She caught up to me just as I reached the elevator bank and pressed the down button. The giggles were completely gone. The confident bride who had just laughed at my missing seat was nowhere to be found. She gripped her cascading bouquet so tightly, the thick green stems bent and cracked against her knuckles. "Do not give Daniel that envelope," she whispered, glancing frantically over her shoulder. "Why?" I asked, keeping my eyes fixed on the brass doors in front of me. "You told me there was nothing in it I did not already know. You said it was just standard legal paperwork." Brooke swallowed hard. Her breath hitched. Mom was calling her name from down the hall, waving her back for family portraits. The elevator arrived with a soft, clear ping. I stepped inside, turned around, and watched the heavy metal doors slide shut on my sister's terrified face. The soft ping of the elevator shifted in my memory, blending into the sharp chime of Mom's oven timer at a Sunday dinner 6 months earlier. We had been sitting around the dining room table. Daniel was across from me, passing a heavy ceramic bowl of roasted potatoes. He had smiled so warmly, full of genuine gratitude. "I really want to thank you, Amanda," Daniel had said. "Brooke told me how much you helped her through the divorce 2 years ago. I know lawyers are incredibly expensive, and you stepping up like that means everything to us." I had stopped chewing. 2 years ago. That timeline simply did not make sense. I possessed a mind built for compliance and auditing. I clearly remembered paying a substantial legal invoice for Brooke just 11 months prior. I did not confront them right over the dining table. I set my silver fork down quietly on my napkin. "When did you see the final decree, Daniel?" I asked. Brooke jumped in before he could even draw a breath to speak. "Oh, the paperwork was finished forever ago," she said cheerfully, quickly pouring more wine into his glass to distract him. Under the table, a sharp kick hit my shin. Mom. The silent, deeply familiar signal demanding my absolute compliance. I took a slow sip of my ice water, nodded once, and let the conversation move on to the wedding cake flavors. Later that same night, sitting alone at the small desk in my quiet condo, I opened my laptop. I pulled up my financial spreadsheet. I had named the file Family Support. I did not track the money out of malice. I tracked it because my family had a relentless habit of rewriting history whenever Brooke needed a rescue. I scrolled down to the legal fees column. $18,000 paid directly to a family law firm over the course of 3 years. I found the date of the very last invoice, opened my web browser, and navigated to the public county court portal. I typed in my sister's legal married name. The screen loaded slowly. I read the case summary once. Then I leaned closer, rubbed my tired eyes, and read every single line again. There was no final judgment recorded anywhere on the document. The very last entry on the public docket was a dismissal. The judge had thrown the entire case out for failure to prosecute. I placed both hands flat on my cool wooden desk. I counted the days, tracing the timeline backward from the current date. Brooke had accepted Daniel's proposal and started planning an elaborate hotel wedding long after her divorce case had already died in court. My sister was about to marry Daniel in a ballroom full of wealthy guests. The court still listed her as Mason Reed's wife. 3 years ago, my sister stood under the flickering porch light of my old rental apartment. Rain soaked the shoulders of her denim jacket. A single, oversized pink suitcase rested against her leg. It was June of 2023. Brooke did not knock. She just waited there until I happened to look out the front window. When I opened the door, she stepped inside, shivering, leaving a trail of water on the hardwood floor. "Mason took everything," she whispered, staring at her wet shoes. "He controls the accounts. I have absolutely nothing left." I did not demand the ugly details of her failing marriage. My sister needed a safe place, so I dragged her heavy suitcase into the spare room. We sat at my kitchen table, drinking lukewarm tea, and I outlined exactly what I could do. 6 months of support. I would pay her landlord directly. I would write the checks for a family law attorney. No cash transfers. She had to find a steady job. "Thank you," Brooke had sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve. "Just until I get on my feet." 2 days later, my mother let herself into my apartment using the spare key I had foolishly provided her years ago. Mom set her designer purse on the counter and folded her arms. 6 months is an arbitrary timeline, Amanda, Mom said. Her voice carried that gentle, disappointed tone she had perfected over decades. "Your father told you to look out for her before he died. He knew Brooke was fragile." "Dad taught us to help people stand up," I replied, washing a coffee mug in the sink. "He did not teach us to carry them forever." Mom sighed loudly, shaking her head. "You have always been so cold." Brooke sat at the table, perfectly silent, letting the guilt trip hang in the heavy air. I dried my hands on a towel. The familiar pressure settled tight in my chest, but I did not break my own rule. I signed a check for the lawyer's retainer fee and handed it to my sister, making it payable only to the firm. That same evening, I opened a blank spreadsheet on my laptop. I titled it Family Support. I logged the date, the check number, and the exact purpose. Every month, I recorded the rent payments, the credit card minimums, and the legal invoices. The money flowed out of my account, but it went straight to the vendors. While Brooke spent her days complaining about the unfairness of the job market, I spent my nights at that small desk. I worked my corporate payroll job during the day. After dinner, I studied for advanced compliance certifications. I declined weekend spa trips with my sister. I skipped family dinners to finish practice exams. "You really do not know how to enjoy life," Mom told me over the phone one evening. "You work too much. It makes you unapproachable." She did not know the certifications came with a massive salary increase. I kept my new income completely hidden. My college friend Elena, who worked as a civil attorney downtown, gave me one piece of crucial advice over coffee. She told me to build an emergency fund at a completely different bank and never mention the balance. By August of 2025, the late nights finally paid off. I purchased a 2-bedroom condo near the city center using my own savings. Mom visited the new place exactly once. She walked through the modest living room, criticized the lack of yard space, and then held out her hand. I will need a spare key for family emergencies. The building manager has an emergency protocol, I told her, leaning against the front door. He keeps the master key. Brooke laughed from the kitchen island. Are you afraid someone is going to steal your little box of an apartment? No, I said quietly. I opened the door and waited for them to leave. When they stepped out into the hallway, I pulled the heavy wooden door shut. The deadbolt engaged with a loud, satisfying click. For the first time in my life, I stood in a home that did not contain my sister's unpaid bills or my mother's quiet judgments. Or so I thought. The financial boundary worked until Brooke started planning her wedding to Daniel. She constantly complained about vendors and confusing spreadsheets, eventually asking me to review her budget. She emailed me a filtered list of bank transactions. I sat in my secure locked condo and opened the file. I scrolled past floral deposits and catering estimates. Then, my eyes caught a peculiar line item. A deposit had hit Brooke's account in March of 2025. The description clearly listed the family law firm we had hired for her divorce. They had issued a refund for unbilled hours. $8,600. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I checked the very next line on the spreadsheet. Exactly 2 days after the law firm returned the money, a debit appeared. It was the initial deposit for the historic hotel ballroom. $8,500. Brooke had looked me in the eye and sworn every cent of my retainer went toward finalizing her complicated divorce. I highlighted the 2 rows on the screen. I saved a copy of the file directly to my secure local drive. The money that should have ended Brooke's first marriage had paid for the room where she planned to start the second. The final $17,500 for the venue requires a simple condition, I told Brooke over the phone the next morning. My sister gasped. A sharp intake of air that usually preceded a tantrum. You have absolutely no right to dig through my private life, Amanda. Because you used your divorce to ask for my financial help, I reminded her, keeping my tone perfectly flat. I just need a copy of the certified final judgment for my records before I authorize the wedding payment. 2 hours later, an email arrived in my inbox. The attached file bore the name Final Divorce Decree Certified. The glare of the computer monitor illuminated my dark living room as I opened the document. My daily corporate job involved hunting for missing healthcare funds, meaning I spent 40 hours a week looking for numbers that did not belong. The file number matched the court records perfectly, but the clerk's stamp looked terribly blurry compared to the sharp black text of the surrounding paragraphs. The margins shifted slightly on page 3, leaving an awkward gap near the bottom. More importantly, the date of the judgment was listed as 3 weeks after the dismissal date I had seen on the public docket. A sudden memory pulled my attention away from the dates. I navigated to an archived folder and opened a temporary support order my sister had forwarded me a year ago when she needed rent money. Placing the 2 windows side by side, the truth became painfully obvious. The stamp on the temporary order possessed the exact same pixelated blur on the left edge as the new decree. I did not alter the file, nor did I confront her immediately. I saved the original email to a secure folder and wrote down the discrepancies on a yellow legal pad. My cell phone vibrated against the desk, startling me in the quiet room. Mom was calling. Brooke is crying uncontrollably, the woman who raised me said the moment I answered. Why are you punishing your sister for finally finding happiness? Did you actually see the certified judgment, Mom? She completely ignored the question, pivoting instantly to her favorite weapon. Your father would be heartbroken to see you treating family like an auditor treats a suspect. You need to think about our reputation and stop this foolishness. Instead of arguing, I pressed the end button and set the phone face down. Mom would always protect her youngest daughter. So I needed undeniable proof. I opened a new message window and typed a very specific request to Brooke. Before I authorize the remaining payment, confirm in writing that your first marriage legally ended and the attached document is the certified final judgment. When the reply came through 12 minutes later, it contained exactly what I needed. Yes, I am legally divorced. Release the payment and stop creating problems. I printed the thread immediately. My sister had just locked her lie in ink, completely unaware that she had handed me the exact leverage I required. The next afternoon, the hissing of an espresso machine filled the noisy coffee shop right across the street from the county courthouse. I slid the printed email and the suspicious PDF across a small wooden table. Elena adjusted her glasses, reading through the pages with the practiced silence of a civil attorney. Listen to me carefully, my friend said, tapping a silver pen against the paper. Do not post anything online, do not threaten her, and do not call her employer. You are going to walk across the street, get the official record, and let the paper trail do the talking. Elena took a slow sip of her black coffee, her eyes scanning the blurry court stamp one more time. You will not get all your money back, Amanda. A judge will consider some of those early payments a gift, but you can stop the bleeding, and you can protect Daniel from marrying into a fraud. Leaving my half-empty cup on the table, I walked out into the crisp autumn air. The courthouse lobby hummed with the quiet urgency of lawyers and security guards. The clerk's office smelled faintly of old paper and floor wax. I stepped up to the thick glass counter, paid a small fee, and requested the certified case summary for Brooke Reed. The man behind the partition stamped a heavy seal onto a crisp sheet of paper and slid it through the metal slot at the bottom. He offered no legal advice, just a tired nod as he called the next number. Carrying the document back across the street, I sat down across from Elena and placed the certified docket next to the PDF my sister had emailed me. The dates were undeniably contradictory. The official court record confirmed a dismissal 16 months ago, and there was absolutely no final judgment on file. Elena studied the two conflicting documents for a long moment. She looked up, her expression completely serious. If this was altered, your sister did not just lie about a divorce. She used the lie to make you pay. My fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard as I deleted my saved billing profiles from every wedding vendor portal. Turning off the automatic payments for my sister's credit cards took only 3 clicks, and I immediately changed the passwords on all my personal banking accounts. Next, I drafted a polite email to Claire. I explained clearly that I was not the contracting party for the venue, and any new charges required separate authorization from the couple. The wedding planner replied 10 minutes later with a brief confirmation. My office phone rang later that afternoon. The regional director called to officially offer me the position of Regional Payroll Compliance Manager, complete with a substantial salary increase. I did not call my mother. I did not text my sister. Instead, I met Elena for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant and celebrated over fresh pasta. The extra money would funnel directly into my emergency fund and retirement accounts. My family had always viewed my income as a shared resource, meant to fix their ongoing crises, while treating Brooke's bank account as her untouchable personal achievement. That era was permanently over. The security buzzer in my condo echoed through the quiet hallway the following evening. Stepping up to the wall panel, I pressed the camera button. Mom stood on the concrete front steps of the building. The woman who raised me clutched her expensive handbag and looked severely annoyed at being made to wait. I pushed the intercom switch and offered to meet her for coffee the next morning. Just let me upstairs right now, her voice cracked through the small plastic speaker. We need to talk like family, and I do not have a spare key. That was not an oversight, I said smoothly. Tears welled up in her eyes on the grainy video feed. I stepped away from the panel, walked into my kitchen, and left the heavy wooden door firmly locked. Elena drafted a strictly neutral letter to Mason Reed the very next morning. The attorney asked solely for a copy of the final decree or any related court documents, carefully mentioning nothing about the upcoming wedding or any potential fraud. Sitting across from the polished wooden desk, I finally voiced my biggest fear. I admitted that Mason might be an abusive, controlling husband intentionally dragging out the process to hold his estranged wife hostage. We are going to rely strictly on the paperwork, Elena advised, sealing the letter inside a crisp envelope. We do not trust anyone's emotional performance. I genuinely hoped Mason would turn out to be the villain in this story. That fragile hope shattered into pieces exactly 3 days later. The response arrived through official legal channels. Mason's attorney provided a copy of the proposed settlement alongside a very clear explanation of the timeline. Mason had actually signed the agreement willingly years ago. Brooke had been the one who refused to provide a full debt disclosure to the court. After months of complete silence from her side, the judge had no choice but to dismiss the case entirely. The attorney also attached a printed email exchange from 16 months ago. My eyes scanned Mason's printed message. He had warned her, in plain text. We are still legally married until a judge enters a final judgment. Brooke's reply sat right beneath his warning. I know. I will handle it. I carried the heavy stack of documents into my living room and cleared my small dining table. Placing Mason's printed warning next to the recent email where my sister swore she was legally divorced, I studied the dates closely. Exactly 16 months separated the two messages. This was not a clerical error, and it was certainly not a misunderstanding caused by a confusing legal system. I typed up a chronological timeline of events, printed 2 copies, and locked the master set inside a fireproof safe hidden in my bedroom closet. Brooke knew. She had known for 16 months, and every dollar she asked me for after that came with a lie attached. Elena's conference room smelled of lemon polish and expensive leather, providing a sharp contrast to the worn canvas jacket draped over the chair across from us. Mason Reed did not look like the controlling monster my sister had described for 3 years. The commercial electrician simply looked completely exhausted, carrying a heavy manila folder that he placed gently onto the center of the large wooden table. He did not ask for my sympathy, nor did he offer any apologies for the past. Mason just wanted his name legally detached from a woman who was about to marry someone else. My attorney friend opened the folder and extracted a thick stack of papers. Mason had brought the proposed settlement agreement, the early financial discovery emails, and a genuine copy of the temporary support order from their initial court hearings. The moment Elena placed the genuine temporary order next to the printed document my sister had emailed me, the entire room went perfectly silent. The case file number sat in the exact same position on both pages. The court clerk stamp carried the identical pixelated blur on the left edge. A small scratch on the courthouse scanner glass had transferred a tiny black speck onto both documents. Brooke had taken a temporary financial order, altered the text to read as a final judgment, and presented it to me as proof of a dissolved marriage. Elena tapped her silver pen against the wood, stating clearly that a forensic document examiner would need to formally verify the alteration later, but the visual evidence was overwhelming. Mason leaned forward and explained exactly why the divorce case had died. He had actually signed the proposed settlement willingly, eager to move on with his life. Brooke, however, had completely refused to submit her mandatory financial disclosure to the judge. The delay was not born of laziness or confusion. My sister carried over $86,000 in secret credit card debt, accumulated across multiple hidden retail accounts. She knew a proper asset division would drag those ugly numbers directly into the public record. More importantly, she knew Daniel would run a background check before they applied for a joint mortgage. Brooke planned to use her new husband's pristine credit score to secure a luxury suburban home, then quietly fix her previous marriage paperwork after the honeymoon. Returning to my quiet condo later that evening, I sat on my sofa and stared at the blank television screen. The silence pressed heavily against my ears. I needed to know exactly how deep the complicity ran in my family, so I picked up my cell phone and dialed the house where I grew up. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice coated in that familiar layer of forced cheerfulness. I did not yell, and I did not reveal the mountain of printed evidence sitting on my dining table. I simply told the woman who raised me that I had pulled the certified court docket, and it contained no final judgment for the divorce. The line went dead quiet for 10 full seconds. A car drove past my window outside, the headlights sweeping across my living room wall, before Mom finally spoke. Paperwork can be fixed after the honeymoon, Amanda. My lungs felt completely empty. I gripped the plastic edge of the phone tightly. Does Daniel know? Mom let out an exasperated sigh, the kind she usually reserved for stubborn children dropping food on her clean carpet. He does not need every ugly detail from your sister's past. You are making a massive issue out of a simple filing delay. I ended the call right then. My thumb hovered over the screen as I opened our text message thread. I needed her admission locked in text, just like Brooke's email. I typed a single direct sentence. You know she is still legally married. 3 agonizing minutes passed before the gray chat bubble appeared, followed by a new message. I know this family needs you to stop making it worse. My phone vibrated again almost immediately, but the new notification came from my sister. Brooke did not offer an apology, nor did she attempt to explain the missing court docket. She simply demanded the final vendor payment because the hotel coordinator was threatening to cancel the premium bar package. Mom says you will calm down and pay like always, Brooke wrote. Send the confirmation number tonight. I read the words 3 times. The sheer audacity of the demand cleared away the last remaining traces of my lingering guilt. I typed a quick response, asking exactly why she believed I would authorize a massive payment for a fraudulent wedding. Because you always do when it matters. That single sentence illuminated my entire 39 years of existence. My sister did not value my love. My mother did not respect my hard work or my independence. They simply loved the fact that I functioned as an endless financial shock absorber for their terrible decisions. My money and my silent obedience were the required currency to maintain my designated seat at their table. Moving over to my desk, I pulled out a fresh, yellow legal pad and drew 3 vertical lines down the page. I created a strict battle plan based entirely on facts. Column 1 contained the undeniable evidence. Column 2 listed the people who absolutely needed the truth. Daniel occupied the very top slot, because the groom deserved to know he was about to sign a fraudulent marriage license. Claire, the hotel planner, simply needed to know I was permanently withdrawing my financial backing. The regional bank where Brooke worked did not belong on the list yet, because I refused to use my sister's career as a weapon. Finally, Mom would receive zero updates, stripping her of any ability to warn the bride or intercept the documents. I folded the yellow paper carefully, placed it inside my fireproof safe alongside the court records, and spun the heavy metal dial. The lock clicked into place with a definitive, satisfying thud. Picking up the spare key to my condo from a ceramic bowl, I ran my thumb over the jagged metal edge, incredibly grateful that I had never surrendered it to them. My phone screen lit up one last time on the dark desk. Brooke's last message was only 5 words. Mom says you always pay. 10 days before the wedding ceremony, the morning sun cast long, pale shadows across my living room floor. I sat at my dining table, ignoring the cold coffee in my mug, and opened a blank email draft. The rhythmic tapping of my fingers on the keyboard sounded unusually loud in the quiet apartment. I added my sister to the recipient line, then carefully copied Mom. My message contained no emotional accusations and absolutely zero threats. I simply stated that the final $17,500 payment required a certified final judgment from the court before Tuesday. Furthermore, I clarified that this was a standard contract requirement, and they remained the primary signers on the venue agreement. Hitting send felt like dropping a heavy stone into a deep well. I waited for the splash, and it arrived exactly 40 minutes later. Brooke replied all, completely ignoring the deadline constraint, and attached the exact same blurry document she had sent previously. I am legally divorced, her message read. Release the payment. My sister had just locked the cage from the inside. Later that afternoon, Elena spread a collection of manila folders across her large mahogany conference table. The civil attorney's office smelled faintly of lemon polish and old books. We needed to curate a specific packet for the groom, removing anything that looked like a petty family squabble. My lawyer friend moved with practiced precision, stacking only the undeniable proof on the polished wood. First went the chronological timeline we had typed together. Next came the certified court docket, showing the dismissal, followed by the fraudulent file Brooke had submitted as proof of divorce. Finally, we added Mason's printed warning and my sister's email demanding the money. No bank statements showing my years of financial support made the cut. We did not include a single emotional letter. He just needs the facts, Elena murmured, sliding the neat stack of paper into a thick cream envelope. If you overwhelm him with your family history, he might write you off as a jealous sibling trying to ruin the big day. I picked up a black marker and wrote Daniel Mercer across the front in block letters. Below his name, I added a simple instruction. Please read before signing the marriage license. My stomach tightened as I sealed the flap, but I placed a duplicate set of documents into my leather tote bag and left a third copy in Elena's secure filing cabinet. Taking control meant giving Daniel a chance to hear the truth privately, so I drafted a brief email to him on Wednesday morning. I requested a short meeting before the ceremony, specifically before any legal paperwork was finalized by the officiant. His response arrived almost immediately, warm and accommodating as always. He agreed to meet me at the hotel following his breakfast with the groomsmen. That small window of hope slammed shut 4 hours later. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter, displaying a text message from Brooke. The bride informed me that Daniel had experienced a sudden scheduling conflict, and I was strictly forbidden from bothering him on the morning of the wedding. She claimed he needed time to relax with his friends. I stared at the glowing screen, fully aware that she had likely intercepted the plan or convinced him to skip the meeting entirely. I did not argue. Instead, I pivoted to a secondary strategy. The best man, Nathan, would be standing right next to the groom all morning. He would become my courier. The promised retaliation arrived on Thursday evening. My phone rang while I was packing my garment bag in the bedroom. Mom's name flashed across the display, and I answered on the third ring, bracing myself for the inevitable storm. Brooke told me you were trying to corner Daniel on Saturday, Mom said. Her voice carried a low, dangerous frequency that usually made my throat go dry. If you bring any of your ridiculous court drama to that hotel, we will not have a seat for you at the reception. My heart rate did not spike. My hands remained perfectly steady on the zipper of my dress bag. I looked around my quiet, secure condo. The invitation stands, Mom. I just need to speak with Daniel before they sign the legal paperwork. Listen to me very carefully, the woman who raised me whispered. If you ruin this day, you will not have a family to come back to. A strange calm settled over my shoulders, completely washing away decades of conditioned anxiety. Then you have misunderstood what I built when I left your house, I replied. I ended the call, set the phone down on the mattress, and let the silence of my own home comfort me. The threat to erase me from the seating chart was not an empty one, but it no longer carried the power to destroy me. Friday morning demanded immediate action, so I logged into my credit card portals and systematically dismantled the financial safety net I had unwittingly provided. I canceled the authorization for the premium bar extension, revoked the payment profile for the after-party transportation, and removed my card from the honeymoon suite reservation. Crucially, I did not issue any fraudulent chargebacks for the services they had already consumed. I simply stopped the bleeding on the uncommitted funds. An email from Claire, the hotel wedding coordinator, arrived shortly after lunch. She confirmed the cancellation of my payment guarantees, noting professionally that the bride and groom would now bear the responsibility for the remaining balance. I printed her confirmation email and slid it into my work briefcase. My legal obligations were officially severed. Saturday morning dawned cold and gray, the middle of October chill seeping through the glass of my bedroom window. As I stood in front of the tall mirror, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. Brooke had sent a text message. "Come early, bring the check. Do not make today about you." I smoothed the fabric of my dark blue dress, appreciating the structured fit and the deep pockets. Walking into the closet, I opened my fireproof safe and retrieved the thick cream envelope. The gold foil seal caught the overhead light. I slipped the heavy packet into the inner pocket of my coat, feeling its weight pressed gently against my ribs. Typing my response took only a few seconds, my fingers moving steadily across the glass screen. "I will come early. I am bringing what you asked me to forget." I walked to the front door, picked up my purse, and stepped out into the quiet hallway. Before walking toward the elevator, I held my spare condo key in my palm for a long beat, feeling the sharp metal ridges press into my skin. It represented the ultimate boundary, a physical manifestation of the peace I refused to surrender to them ever again. Brooke asked me to bring the check. I brought the court record instead. The bridal suite on the 7th floor smelled intensely of burning curling irons and sweet champagne. I knocked once on the heavy wooden door, pushed it open, and stepped into the absolute chaos. Bridesmaids scattered across the carpet like startled birds. Brooke sat in a high chair facing a massive lighted mirror, wearing a white silk robe. Mom hovered right behind her, adjusting a sparkling veil. Walking straight to the makeup counter, I pulled the thick cream envelope from my coat pocket and set it down next to a tube of expensive lipstick. "You have 1 hour before the ceremony starts," I said quietly, keeping my voice low enough that the makeup artist in the corner could not hear. "Tell Daniel the truth before you sign the legal paperwork, and I will walk away." Brooke glanced at the court seal on the envelope, and her painted smile vanished completely. "The case technically ended, Amanda. The final entry is just a bureaucratic formality. The docket says dismissed," I corrected her, leaning slightly forward. "And Mason explicitly warned you that you were still married 16 months ago. You chose to ignore him." The bride's flawless complexion turned a sickly shade of gray at the mention of her first husband's name. Mom immediately stepped between us, her hands fluttering in the air like defensive shields. "We will sort out the old paperwork after the honeymoon," the woman who raised me whispered fiercely. "Do not do this today." Brooke did not cry. The fragile victim act she had played for 3 years disappeared in a heartbeat, replaced by a cold, calculating stare that made her look exactly like Mom. "Daniel does not need to know about some old legal delay," my sister hissed, gripping the padded arms of her makeup chair. "If you try to ruin this for me, I will tell everyone here that you are just a pathetic, jealous spinster. I will make sure the entire extended family knows you tried to destroy my wedding because you could never find a man of your own." I looked at the woman I had spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to save, and I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no grief. The emotional well had finally run dry. "The deadline remains the same," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "Before he signs the license." Brooke snapped her fingers, calling her bridesmaids back into the room. "Amanda is leaving," she announced loudly. She expected me to leave the documents behind in my defeat. Instead, I picked up the cream envelope, slid it safely back into my coat pocket, and walked out the door. The ceremony took place in the hotel courtyard under a massive canopy of white flowers. I did not sit in the second row, where the immediate family usually gathered. My sister had already altered the seating chart, placing me far in the back among distant cousins and awkward plus ones. I sat there quietly, watching them exchange vows, and I did not stand up to object. I refused to turn a legal boundary into a theatrical spectacle. When the guests moved toward the ballroom for cocktail hour, I slipped down a side hallway. I found Nathan, the best man, standing near the coat check holding a tray of drinks. "Nathan," I said, offering a polite smile. "Daniel left this in the bridal suite earlier." Could you give it to him right before they sign the license in the private room? The groomsman took the thick envelope, nodding happily, completely unaware of the explosive material inside. Walking away, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message directly to the groom. Please read the envelope Nathan brings you before signing any legal document. Approaching the ballroom entrance a few minutes later, the heavy scent of white roses flooded the main corridor. The gold-framed seating chart stood exactly where I knew it would be. I scanned the alphabetical list, noting that my name had been completely erased from the display. Brooke stepped up beside me, holding a tall glass of champagne, flanked by Mom and a few giggling bridesmaids. Oops, we forgot your seat, my sister giggled, tapping her manicured nail against the glass board. Mom pointed a sharp finger toward the exit signs. You should probably head home, Amanda. One of the bridesmaids let out a soft laugh, but the sound died instantly when she realized I was not blushing or running away in tears. I turned to face the bride. Do not worry, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the hallway noise. Looks like we both forgot something. I did not wait for Brooke to reply, nor did I stay to watch her realize the envelope was no longer in my pocket. I simply turned my back and began walking toward the main hotel lobby. Claire, the hotel wedding coordinator, intercepted me near the grand staircase before I could reach the front doors. Her headset light blinked frantically against her ear. Amanda, the planner said breathlessly. Brooke said you are authorizing the final $17,500 for the venue balance and the premium bar right now. I stopped walking, opened my leather tote bag, and pulled out the printed confirmation email Claire had sent me yesterday. I handed the paper directly to her. I am not the contracting party, I explained clearly. I withdrew my financial guarantees yesterday afternoon. Brooke caught up to us, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. She promised verbally, my sister demanded, pointing a shaking finger at me. Charge her card on file right now. I looked directly at the bride, fully aware that a dozen wedding guests were standing near the coat check, listening to every single word. My gift depended on a legal divorce, I stated, my voice echoing slightly in the cavernous lobby. You confirmed one that does not exist. A heavy, suffocating silence dropped over the gathered crowd. Guests exchanged confused, horrified glances. Brooke stood completely frozen, her mouth opening and closing without producing a single sound. While my sister stood paralyzed in the lobby, the heavy wooden doors of the private signing room suddenly swung open down the hall. I watched Daniel step out into the corridor. The live band inside the ballroom was playing a cheerful jazz standard, but the groom looked violently ill. His face was completely drained of color. In his left hand, he clutched the cream envelope I had given Nathan. In his right hand, he held the official state marriage license application. I knew exactly what must have happened behind those closed doors. He had read the certified docket. He had seen the fake PDF. And then he had looked down at the government form Brooke had filled out weeks ago. She had been forced to write a specific date of divorce on that application to get the license approved by the state. Daniel ignored the whispering guests. He bypassed the wedding planner entirely. Marching straight up to the bride, he held up the government application, his hands shaking with barely contained fury. Daniel looked at the woman he loved and asked, Brooke, who is Mason Reed? The heavy silence in the grand lobby broke when Daniel turned abruptly and walked toward the private signing room. He did not yell. Brooke stumbled after her fiancé, her white gown dragging across the polished marble floor, while Mom hurried closely behind. Nathan, the best man, gestured for the officiant and me to enter the small mahogany-paneled office before pulling the heavy wooden doors firmly shut. Inside the enclosed space, the air felt stifling and completely still. Daniel dropped the cream envelope onto a small glass table, picked up the state marriage application, and looked directly at my sister. I need you to tell me the exact date your first marriage ended, the groom said, his voice stripped of all its usual warmth. Brooke swallowed hard, gripping the edge of a leather chair. She provided a date in late May, her eyes darting nervously toward Mom. That is fascinating, Daniel replied, holding up the government application. Because you wrote a completely different date in August on this sworn legal document, and the certified court docket in this envelope lists a dismissal from April of last year. That makes 3 different dates, Brooke. Mom immediately stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on the bride's trembling shoulder. The woman who raised me offered a practiced, reassuring smile. The court systems are just terribly slow these days, Daniel. Amanda is blowing a simple clerical delay vastly out of proportion because she feels left out. I did not raise my voice to argue. I stood near the closed doors and stated one simple fact. The certified public docket contains no final judgment. Daniel pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket, snapping clear photographs of the fraudulent decree, the actual docket, and the marriage application. He announced that he was sending the images directly to his family attorney for immediate review. The officiant cleared his throat, stepping away from the glass table. The older man picked up his gold pen and capped it with a sharp click. He stated clearly that he could not legally finalize any marriage license, while the bride's capacity to wed remained in question. Gathering his leather portfolio, the minister stepped back against the wall. Panic finally shattered Brooke's frozen demeanor. "You cannot just walk away," my sister cried out, reaching desperately for Daniel's sleeve. "We already stood out there in the courtyard. We already said our vows in front of everyone." The groom stepped backward, easily avoiding her grasp. "You let me stand in front of my entire family and make a legal vow based on forged documents," he said quietly. "This paperwork is stopping right now." Leaving the bride sobbing into her hands, Daniel opened the heavy doors and walked out to find his parents. The lavish reception began unraveling immediately. Through the open doorway, I could see the massive 5-tier wedding cake sitting completely untouched on its silver pedestal. The live band stopped playing mid-song, packing their brass instruments back into velvet-lined cases, while confused guests slowly began moving toward the valet stand. Claire, the hotel wedding coordinator, slipped into the private room a moment later. The planner clutched her clipboard, looking incredibly uncomfortable. She informed the room that Daniel had officially revoked his payment authorization for the entire event, and she noted that I had already withdrawn my financial backing. The master contract still held the couple fully responsible for the remaining balance. Daniel's attorney would handle his portion regarding the misrepresentation, leaving the bride facing a mountain of immediate debt. Mom turned toward me, her eyes pleading. "Just cover it tonight, Amanda. We can sort out the details tomorrow, but please do not let them humiliate your sister." I looked at the woman who had spent decades conditioning me to absorb every family disaster. That is how we got here. Turning my back on them, I walked out of the suffocating room and headed down the long, empty hallway toward the exit. The thick carpets muffled my footsteps, but the frantic clicking of high heels soon echoed behind me. Brooke chased me down the corridor, catching my forearm just before I reached the main lobby. My sister was crying genuinely now, her perfect makeup ruined. She grabbed my hand, begging me to come back to the ballroom. She pleaded with me to tell Daniel the court simply updated their records slowly, and she begged me to pay Claire before the hotel management involved the police. I gently detached her fingers from my skin, feeling nothing but a profound sense of exhaustion. "Which lie do you want me to pay for, Brooke?" I asked, my voice echoing slightly against the high ceiling. "The wedding, or the husband you never divorced?" "Just this once," the bride whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "There has never been a just once with you." I kept walking, pushing through the heavy glass doors into the cool evening air. Before I reached the parking garage, my phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Brooke had left a voicemail. I pressed the speaker button, letting the audio play quietly as I stood near a concrete pillar. "Tell Daniel you misunderstood," my sister's recorded voice demanded, her tone shifting seamlessly from desperation back to manipulation. "I will fix the divorce after the honeymoon. Please pay Claire tonight." A shadow moved to my left. Daniel stood a few feet away, holding a warm, untouched glass of champagne. He had come outside to escape the crowd, and he had heard every single word echoing from my phone speaker. The groom did not yell. He walked past me, pulling his phone to his ear. I heard him leave a message for Brooke, stating calmly that their engagement was permanently over and all future communication would go through his lawyer. Then, Daniel added a devastating detail. He mentioned that she had also used that same fraudulent decree in the employee mortgage paperwork they had prepared for their new house, meaning the document would likely be reported to her corporate compliance department. Daniel stopped at the edge of the valet stand, looking back into the hotel lobby where the unopened wedding cake sat in the empty room. "I am giving every copy of this document to my lawyer," he said. 2 weeks passed before the dust truly began to settle. Mason hired a new attorney and filed a legitimate divorce petition, legally demanding a full disclosure of all hidden marital debts. Daniel moved with equal precision. The former groom permanently dissolved the joint wedding accounts, terminated the suburban house purchase, and requested his ring back. Brooke dragged her oversized pink suitcase right back into my mother's guest bedroom. Sitting in my quiet condo, I watched the days turn into weeks. I paid absolutely zero bills. By the middle of November, the legal terminology shifted completely. Elena called me on a Tuesday morning with a major update from Daniel's legal team. His attorney had hired a forensic document examiner to review the court files. The expert officially confirmed that the clerk stamp and the judicial signature block on the fake decree had been digitally copied directly from the old temporary support order. The word forgery formally entered the legal correspondence. That revelation triggered a massive domino effect. Brooke had foolishly submitted that exact same altered document to her employer while applying for an employee discount rate on her new mortgage. When Daniel canceled the house purchase and flagged the paperwork, the regional bank initiated a strict internal audit. My sister was immediately placed on unpaid administrative leave pending a corporate investigation. Brooke called my cell phone that evening, her voice completely hysterical. "You are actively destroying my entire career," she screamed through the speaker. "The compliance office is auditing my entire client portfolio because of you." "I did not put that altered document into your employment file," I replied calmly. I ended the call and blocked her number. 3 months after the shattered reception, the financial reality finally caught up to them. The historic hotel, the luxury travel agency, and multiple credit card companies sent aggressive demand notices. Brooke was forced to sell her luxury sport utility vehicle just to cover the minimum monthly payments on her secret debts. Mom quickly realized her own retirement savings could not sustain a second adult indefinitely. The woman who raised me called on a Sunday morning, her voice thick with exhaustion, asking if I could provide a small temporary loan to keep the collection agencies away. I opened my laptop and emailed her the contact information for a certified credit counselor. I did not send a single dollar. "You have become incredibly cruel," Mom whispered into the phone. "Support no longer means payment," I told her quietly. Desperation soon bred a completely different strategy. Brooke logged onto her social media accounts and posted a massive essay detailing her victimization. She accused me of extreme jealousy, claiming I had maliciously manipulated court records and stolen her promised wedding funds at the absolute last minute. Several distant aunts called my cell phone within hours, demanding explanations and accusing me of breaking our family apart. Elena responded by drafting a swift cease and desist order. The legal notice bound my sister to stop spreading defamatory claims regarding stolen money or forged documents. I chose a more personal approach for the family. Instead of arguing in the comments section, I invited 3 key family elders to a private afternoon meeting at my condo. I placed the certified court docket, the chronological timeline, and the printed email from Brooke right on my small dining table. The older relatives read the papers in complete silence. No one made jokes about my difficult personality or my cold nature ever again. The quiet realization in their eyes was worth more than any public apology. My sister's final act of defiance arrived via certified mail exactly 4 months after the wedding. Brooke sent a formal demand letter through a cheap civil attorney, officially claiming I owed her $17,500 for a broken verbal contract. She desperately wanted the venue money she was now legally forced to pay. Elena simply laughed when she read the printed document in her office. My attorney friend tapped her silver pen against the paper, pointing out that Brooke had explicitly agreed to my written conditions regarding a legal divorce in her own email. We agreed to schedule a formal mediation session to avoid a lengthy and unnecessary civil trial. Brooke walked into the downtown mediation center wearing a conservative gray suit and clutching a crumpled tissue. She fully believed her tears and her emotional performance would somehow overrule the cold, hard evidence sitting securely in my leather briefcase. Brooke brought me to mediation to prove I had broken a promise. She had just placed her own lie into the official record. The downtown mediation center offered absolutely no comfort, featuring only a sterile glass table and 4 rigid ergonomic chairs. Elena sat beside me, calmly organizing the printed ledger, the email condition thread, the certified court docket, and the bank routing numbers that traced the refund. Brooke sat directly across from us. My sister twisted a shredded tissue between her fingers, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Her cheap civil attorney looked completely exhausted before the session even began. The mediator, a retired judge with sharp gray eyes, adjusted his reading glasses. He reviewed the printed email where my sister explicitly confirmed a legal divorce in order to release the final wedding payment. The older man did not care about complex family dynamics or tears. He only cared about actionable, documented misrepresentation. Brooke tried to cry anyway. She claimed the $17,500 was a guaranteed wedding gift, promised years in advance, and my sudden withdrawal caused her severe emotional distress. The retired judge tapped the printed email with a heavy silver pen. He pointed out that her own written words tied the funds directly to a legal condition she had willfully fabricated. He warned her attorney that a public courtroom would not look kindly upon altered government documents. Within 2 hours, the undeniable paper trail forced a complete surrender. We reached an ironclad settlement agreement. My sister officially withdrew her demand letter, fully acknowledging on the record that she had zero legal claim to the venue money. Furthermore, she agreed to a strict payment plan to reimburse a portion of the original legal fees she had obtained under false pretenses. Taking back every single dollar of the $63,000 I had spent over 3 years was impossible, but Elena secured an enforceable legal victory. Consequences rippled outward rapidly over the following weeks. The corporate investigation at the regional bank concluded swiftly. Human Resources officially terminated Brooke's employment, citing the altered court document submitted in her internal mortgage application and the falsified marital status attestation. Without a steady corporate income or Daniel's pristine credit score, she faced a brutal new financial reality. Mason finalized the actual divorce through a ruthless settlement process that dragged every hidden retail credit card debt into the public light. Daniel never came back. A small, thick envelope arrived in my mailbox a month later. It contained a brief, handwritten note on heavy cardstock. The former groom simply thanked me for stopping the paperwork before the state formalized the fraud, and then he quietly exited my life forever. Mom called me on a rainy Tuesday evening in early December. The woman who raised me sounded incredibly old, her usual commanding tone completely shattered. "Brooke has absolutely nowhere else to go," Mom pleaded over the phone, her voice shaking. "She needs a quiet place to regroup. The collection agencies are calling my house constantly. Please just let her use your spare bedroom for a few months. Bring me a copy of your condo key." Standing by my kitchen window, I watched the city lights blur in the falling rain. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to negotiate or explain myself. "She can stay in her old childhood room," I replied smoothly. "You always said that room belonged to her." Silence stretched across the cellular connection. Mom was finally trapped inside the very system she had built and protected. The woman who had enabled years of financial abuse would now spend her retirement living with the golden child and a mountain of unpaid bills. There was no designated scapegoat left to absorb the stress. Before she could launch another guilt trip, I laid down my final conditions. "We will only communicate via email for the next 6 months. Do not ask me for money, and do not show up at my building unannounced. The security desk will turn you away." I disconnected the call without waiting for an agreement. Walking over to my small wooden desk, I opened the laptop. The family support spreadsheet sat right there on the illuminated desktop. I did not delete the file, because Elena advised keeping the records safe, but I moved it deep into a locked archive folder. Opening a fresh document, I typed a new title at the very top: My Life. The regional manager promotion came with a substantial quarterly bonus, and the funds hit my account the next morning. Instead of paying someone else's emergency bills, I transferred a large portion directly to my mortgage principal. With the remaining money, I visited a local furniture boutique and purchased a beautiful dining table crafted from solid oak. 4 wooden chairs surrounded the new table by the time spring arrived in the city. Soft evening light spilled through the large windows of my condo, illuminating a small, quiet dinner party. Elena sat across from me, laughing at a joke made by my favorite coworker. The smell of roasted garlic and fresh basil filled the warm air. My cell phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Mom's name flashed on the bright screen. I walked over, picked up the device, and placed it face down on the cool marble. I felt no fear, no lingering guilt, and no urgent need to answer. I was simply living in my own moment. Looking back at the dining table, a profound sense of peace settled into my chest. Nobody had to pay a retainer fee to earn a seat in this room. Nobody got erased from a chart just to make another person feel larger. Every person sitting in those chairs was chosen through genuine respect and mutual care. They had forgotten my seat because they believed I would always pay for a place in their family. They were wrong. I had already built a home of my own. Sometimes the hardest lesson you will ever learn is that you cannot buy genuine love, no matter how many times you open your wallet. When you are designated as the strong one in your family, it is incredibly easy to confuse being needed with being valued. But true family does not demand that you finance their deception or absorb the crushing weight of their mistakes just to keep the peace. You have to recognize when your generosity is no longer helping someone stand up, but simply funding their refusal to walk. Setting a firm financial boundary is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of profound self-preservation. You are allowed to stop paying the ransom for your own seat at their table, and you have every right to protect the resources you worked so hard to earn. You are allowed to walk away and build a home where your presence is celebrated, not invoiced. Have you ever found yourself trapped in the exhausting role of the family fixer? And what was the final straw that made you finally walk away to build a safe space of your own? Share your story in the comments below, because nobody should have to carry that heavy burden completely alone.